I moved back to my childhood neighborhood a few weeks ago after my divorce. I thought being around familiar places would bring me comfort. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so I often work from home, mostly alone. The old brick houses and gardens reminded me of how things used to be. The rain outside felt nostalgic, but something felt different. On my third night, I was sketching when I heard a soft tapping on my window. At first I thought it was just rain. I shook my head and focused on my work, but deep down I felt uneasy. The shadows outside twisted in the dim light, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. As the nights went by, the tapping returned, louder and more urgent. It gnawed at my nerves. I tried to ignore it, but my heart raced every time. I thought maybe it was a branch hitting the window. I leaned closer to see, but there was nothing, just darkness. I learned that many neighbors around me recently experienced loss. It made me think about how they were struggling, each carrying their own sadness. I wondered if the tapping was connected to that. I felt paranoid, like something tied me to their grief. One night the tapping stopped suddenly. I was relieved but also left feeling uneasy. The silence felt thick, like something was waiting. I stared out into the dark, feeling like something was watching me. I didn't see anything, but I felt it there. It made my skin crawl. Then one night I finally saw it. I glanced outside again, searching through the dark. At first I thought it was just my mind playing tricks, but there was something out there, standing still. I couldn't see it clearly, but I saw a shape. What was it doing? I felt cold, like ice had seeped into my bones. I opened my mouth to call out, but my words wouldn't come. I blinked, and for a moment I convinced myself it was just a trick of the light. But then it smiled. That twisted, wide grin sent terror through me. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I stared at it, frozen in place, and just like that, it was gone. The silence returned, heavier than before. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know if this was real or if I was losing my mind. I pulled away from the window, my hands shaking. The nights after that were filled with uncertainty. I still heard the tapping sometimes, but I didn't know if it was real. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. I didn't know what to do next. The thought of calling a neighbor or reaching out felt impossible. I was terrified of what I might find. So I stayed silent, waiting for a sign that everything was okay. But all I got was the cold embrace of night. The next night, I found myself unable to focus on my work. The tapping hadn't returned, but I felt an electric tension in the air. I kept looking out the window, half expecting to see that shape again. I didn't want to. I just wanted a normal night, but I couldn't relax. After hours of trying to work, I decided a walk would clear my head. I needed fresh air. Besides, maybe I could connect with a neighbor and learn some more about the odd things happening around here. As I stepped outside, the dampness kissed my skin. The rain had left everything sparkling, but the beauty felt like a mask over something darker. I walked slowly, hoping to see Mrs. Bennet, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down. She often sat on her porch during the evenings. I spotted her there, wrapped in her shawl, staring blankly at the ground. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly. I had seen that same look on others in the neighborhood. Lost, haunted. "Mrs. Bennet," I called, approaching her cautiously. She turned slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, dear, you're back," she said, her voice shaky. "Yes, just moved in. I've been meaning to check in on everyone. How are you?" "I lost my husband a few months ago," she murmured. "It's been hard." I nodded, feeling sympathy for her. "I'm sorry. I've noticed a lot of sadness around here. Is there something more?" Her eyes darted to the shadows across the street, then back to me. "It's not just loss, you know. Sometimes things come back like echoes of grief." I felt a chill creep up my spine. "What do you mean?" "The tapping," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. It happens when the shadows want to be seen. You aren't the first to hear it. I bit my lip, swallowing hard. You've heard it. Many times, she sighed, but the last time I looked out there, I saw it too. I took a step back, my heart racing. What did you see? It was smiling, just like you described. Her voice faded, her gaze turned distant. It's a warning. It's been coming for those who suffer. I felt the urge to bolt, but something held me there. What do you mean by warning? Don't let it in, she whispered. Don't listen to it. It preys on the vulnerable. Believe me, it takes more than you think. As that sank in, I noticed something at the edge of her garden. A dark figure moved just outside the light. My pulse quickened. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I felt rooted. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement, far too familiar. I turned back to Mrs. Bennet, but she seemed transfixed. I whispered, "It's here." Just as I readied to run, the air shifted. The night turned heavy, thick with an unseen presence. I turned again, and the shadow was closer than before, its smile wide and grotesque. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for breath. The darkness felt thick against my skin, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me. I blinked, struggling to find my bearings. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as the events of the night flooded back. Mrs. Bennet, the shadow. Where was I? I squirmed, half expecting to be somewhere else, but I was still outside, the cool breeze brushing against my face. The street was quiet, too quiet. The porch where Mrs. Bennet had sat was empty. I pushed myself up to a seated position, the damp grass beneath me a reminder of the confusion. My pulse raced as I scrambled to my feet. "Mrs. Bennet?" I called, my voice shaky. No answer. I took a cautious step back towards her house, heart in my throat. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Fighting my instincts to run home, I turned instead and walked toward the garden where I had first seen it. The moonlight illuminated the flowers, but shadows lurked, hiding secrets. I stepped closer, scanning the area, when a noise froze me in place, a soft rustling like whispers carried by the wind. Suddenly, the faintest glimmer caught my eye. In the moonlight, I saw something glinting on the ground. With hesitation, I approached it. As I got closer, I realized it was an old photograph, damp and crumpled. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The image was blurry but recognizable. It showed a group of people posed in front of a small house. The smiles on their faces twisted something in my gut. I felt I'd seen this place before. The house looked familiar, very familiar. I flipped the photograph over, my breath hitching. Scrawled in faded ink were the names of the people. The Hunters, 1975. My mind raced. Was this a ghost story, a gathering of people who had lived in my neighborhood decades ago? A chill ran through me. What had happened to them? My pulse quickened as I scanned the shadows lurking around me. Then, from behind the darkness of a nearby tree, I heard a voice. "You shouldn't have looked." I spun around, my heart racing, as I saw a figure standing in the fog. It was a little girl, no older than 10. Her eyes glimmered with an odd mixture of sadness and something sinister. "They don't like being disturbed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" I managed to ask, barely holding my ground. "The Hunters. They're still here." That was enough to flip my blood to ice. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. I realized I hadn't just stumbled into some old story. I had awoken something that should have stayed buried. "What do you mean?" I asked, though the words tasted like gravel. The girl grinned, revealing an unsettling smile. "They've been waiting for someone like you. The tapping. It's a sign." Every instinct screamed at me to get away, but curiosity tugged at my mind. "What do they want?" She stepped out of the shadows, the moon casting her features into sharp relief. "They want to play again." An icy dread wrapped around me, but before I could react, she pointed behind me. "Look!" I whirled, and there it was. The shadow, creeping closer, its grotesque smile wider than before. I stumbled backward, realization crashing over me. I had to get out of there. But the ground felt sticky, heavy. The darkness closed in, and I knew. I hadn't just found a photograph. I had uncovered a nightmare that might be coming for me next. I turned and ran, not looking back. I bolted down the street, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. I could hear the rustling behind me, the crunch of leaves underfoot. Was it the girl or the shadow? I didn't dare look back. All I knew was that I had to reach home. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run faster, but the chill of the night slowed my legs, as if the air were pulling me back to the garden. The shadows seemed to stretch and swell, whispering unrecognizable words of warning. "Don't look back. Don't look back." As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with a lamppost, its flickering light casting an eerie glow. I hesitated, catching my breath for just a moment. My heart pounded in rhythm with the light, flickering, fading. I didn't have time to slow down. My house was just a few doors down. I sprinted forward, but the pounding footsteps echoed behind me, growing louder. It felt like someone was chasing me, but my mind was too frantic to consider the possibility. I spotted my front porch and practically lunged for the door, fumbling with the keys in my pocket. My hands were slick with sweat and panic. Finally, I forced the key into the lock, my pulse drumming in my ears. The door creaked open, and I rushed inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned back against it, pressing my palms against the wood, desperate for a moment of safety. The darkness in my house felt familiar, yet ominous. I turned to lock the door, then looked around. My living room was bathed in shadows. I wanted to yell for my parents, but the words wouldn't come. I simply stood in the silence, straining to hear any sounds from outside. After what felt like an eternity, I finally heard the rustle again. This time, it was inside. The sound was coming from the hallway, just beyond the reach of the lamplight. My heart sank. What was it? I thought of the girl, the shadow that had come so close. I was sure I wasn't alone. I hesitated, my mind racing through every horror movie I had ever seen, but I knew I couldn't just stand there. I had to find out what was going on. With each step toward the hallway, dread pooled in my stomach. I remembered the girl saying they wanted to play again. What did that even mean? As I reached the end of the hallway, I peered around the corner. There was nothing at first, only the muted glow from my bedroom, where I could see the light flickering on and off. It seemed almost mocking, like it knew something I didn't. Then everything went dark. The lights cut out with a sharp crackle, plunging me into complete blackness. Panic surged within me as I fumbled for my phone. I switched on the flashlight, heart racing, illuminating the hallway, but the beam only revealed more shadows. That's when I saw it. A figure stood at the end of the hall. It was thin and tall, its form melting into the darkness. I felt paralyzed, a statue of fear. "Let's play," it whispered, and I couldn't breathe. I forced myself to move, my feet finally responding as I stumbled back, searching for a way out. My back pressed against the wall, the chill of the wood seeping through my clothes. I raised my phone, the light slicing through the darkness, but it felt flimsy against the looming figure. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it took a step forward, ethereal and silent, as if it moved without disturbing the air. My breath caught in my throat. "Stay away!" I shouted, trying to sound assertive despite the fear pooling in my chest. The shadow paused. I glanced behind me, half expecting an escape route, but the hallway felt like a trap, nothing but darkness closing in. My heart raced as I squinted at the figure. It didn't seem solid. It flickered like a candle flame, threatening to vanish. "Want to play?" it repeated, dragging the words like an echo from the depths of an old memory. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I remembered the girl. She had said something similar. These weren't just words, they meant something. My instincts kicked in. "What do you want from me?" I asked, desperate for clarity. "Not from you," it purred, as if savoring each word. With you. My skin crawled. What kind of game was this? Suddenly a loud crash echoed from the living room, breaking the trance. I turned my flashlight toward the sound, the beam shaking in my hand. It flickered again, but I didn't care. I had to know. With every ounce of bravery I could muster, I shouted, "What's going on in there?" Fear tinged my voice, but I pressed on. Taking a deep breath, I edged around the corner, pointing the light toward the living room. The space felt larger, with the darkness swallowing the corners. The couch was overturned, and the coffee table lay splintered. My heart sank. I hadn't made that mess. Had someone been in my house? My fight-or-flight response kicked in again, the need to call for help rising. I turned back only to find the figure moving closer. "You're not alone," it hissed, its voice weaving in and out of reality. "They want to play." I stumbled back, almost falling over the threshold to my bedroom. "What do you mean? Who?" But before it could reply, a loud thump came from the hallway directly behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam flickering dramatically. A shadow emerged from the darkness, tall and slender, just like the first. But this one had deep-set eyes glowing like embers, flickering with eagerness. "Let's play," it echoed, and I felt ice flow through my veins. The air thickened with a sense of impending doom. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet I stood frozen, trapped between two shadows whispering promises of a game I feared to comprehend. I couldn't breathe. The shadows loomed large, their glowing eyes boring into mine. I felt paralyzed, frozen in this nightmare. "No," I whispered, knowing it wouldn't make any difference. The hallway felt even smaller now, as if it were constricting around me. "Do you want to join?" the first figure breathed, its words curling around me like smoke. My heart pounded louder, drowning out the voice of reason in my head, urging me to move. "Leave me alone," I shouted, desperate and trembling. My hands shook as I tightened my grip on the flashlight, its beam reflecting uncertainty. Then a flicker caught my eye. There, in the living room, a movement. I turned, squinting through the darkness. Was there something tangible among the wreckage? As my brain struggled to connect the dots, I caught sight of a small object glimmering. The edge of a photo frame caught the light. I took a cautious step forward, edging away from the shadows behind me. What was that? I asked myself. The urge to investigate pushed me forward. Maybe something in the house could help me understand what was happening. As I approached the living room, every creak of the floorboards felt amplified. The once familiar space now appeared foreign and menacing. The overturned couch revealed the frame, now dusty and half-buried beneath the detritus. I reached down and pulled it free. My hands were trembling, but I needed answers. When I wiped away the grime, my heart plummeted. It was a picture of me and my sister taken years ago. I remembered that day vividly. We had been laughing, carefree. I could almost hear her voice. "Do you want to play?" the second figure asked again, its voice hoarse and growing impatient. I felt a knot in my stomach as I realized their game wasn't just to scare me. They wanted something deeper, something linked to this photograph. Before I could wrap my head around it, a cold draft swept past me, brushing against my skin like fingers trailing through my hair. I turned sharply to find the first shadow drifting toward me, its form flickering in and out like a faulty bulb. "Come back to us," it breathed hungrily, and I felt dread boil within me. I had to escape. "Get away from me," I yelled, adrenaline surging through my veins as I turned and ran back toward the hallway. The shadows followed, their laughter echoing behind me, chilling me to my core. I stumbled into the bathroom, slamming the door shut. I leaned against it, gasping for breath, listening for any signs of pursuit. That's when I saw it, sharp and glinting under the sink, a knife. My pulse quickened, but then I hesitated. What would I do with it? In that moment, everything felt alive. Every creak, every whisper outside the door reminded me I had become part of their game. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about understanding what they wanted from me. The pounding on the door began, sending vibrations through my body. "Join us," they called, their tones dripping with insidious glee. I gripped the knife tightly, knowing I had to confront them, but I was still searching for the way out of this twisted game. As the door splintered, I braced myself against the wall, my heart racing. I had to make a choice. Would I fight back, or was I going to lose myself within their shadows? The door creaked under the pressure, a splintering sound that echoed in my chest. Each thud sent shockwaves of fear through me. I pressed the knife closer, my fingers slick with sweat. What was I going to do? Fight or flee? I could hear the whispers grow louder, mingling with their laughter. "Join us," they called again, urgency seeping into their voices. "It's fun." There was a sickening allure to their words, promising something both exciting and terrifying. But I knew better. I had to resist. Suddenly the door buckled just enough to leave a gap at the bottom. I could see shadowy fingers curling around the edges, reaching in like wraiths. Panic filled me, and I pulled back, almost stumbling over a small bath mat. That's when I heard it, a distant sound that cut through the shadows. Water. A rush, echoing in the pipes beneath the floor, like a hidden current below a still pond. It tugged at my curiosity, offering a different kind of potential escape. Was I the only one in this nightmare? I focused on the water, letting it drown out the laughter just outside. I pressed my ear to the wall, straining to hear more. What if I wasn't alone? What if someone else was trapped here with me? With a burst of resolve, I made my choice. I wouldn't succumb without a fight. I could use the knife, but I also needed a plan. Carefully, I crouched down and grabbed the edge of the sink, scanning for anything useful. The sound of the water grew louder, and I realized it was coming from the bathroom wall. Gripping the knife tightly, I gathered my courage. If there was a way to break through the wall, perhaps I could find another way out. I took a deep breath, then started pounding with the flat side of the blade against the wall. It wasn't a superhuman strength, it was desperation. The echoes bounced back, mingling with the laughter just outside the door. I knew they could hear me. Then the wall cracked. A small fissure appeared and water gushed out, flooding toward my feet. It was cold, shocking. I could see the surface of the wall beginning to crumble, revealing a dark space behind it. "Join us!" came the voices again, more insistent now, almost angry. I recognized the shift in their tone. The game was changing. They saw me searching for an escape. I took a quick glance back at the door. The shadows were still there, their forms shifting impatiently. I had to act fast. I thrust the blade into the gap, using it to pry further. The wall gave way more easily than I expected. Just as the opening widened enough for me to crawl through, I heard a loud crash behind me. The door burst open, splintering completely, revealing the figures in their full, shadowy forms. With a quick glance, I ducked into the breach, forcing my body through. The darkness behind the wall consumed me, but I could feel the air change. There was something different about it. It hinted at hidden paths and potential refuge. I landed in a cramped tunnel, the ground slippery beneath my feet. Behind me, the shadows poured into the bathroom, their murmurs growing frantic. I hurried deeper into the dark, adrenaline rushing through me. What lay ahead? Would this tunnel lead to safety, or was it another trap? My heart hammered as I pressed on, the shadows' voices ringing in my ears. The urgency pressed me forward. I had to keep moving. Suddenly, I stumbled over something, a small object in the dark. I reached down, feeling it with my fingers. Another photo, more memories. But as I pulled it into the faint light, my breath caught. This one was different, a picture that couldn't possibly exist. A face I recognized, but it wasn't just mine or my sister's. There were shadows lurking in the corners, watching. I was now part of a story that surpassed time, and whatever was in this place, it was far from finished with me. I shoved the photo into my pocket, heart racing. The faces in the picture swirled in my mind, echoing like whispers. I had to focus. The tunnel loomed before me, and the laughter of the shadows faded, replaced by the low thrum of water. It felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this place. As I crept deeper, the ground shifted from hard tiles to earth that was damp and uneven. I could hear the rush of water more clearly now, flowing through hidden channels. Each step felt deliberate, weighted with uncertainty. I had no idea where this tunnel would lead, but I couldn't go back. Then I caught sight of something glowing faintly in the distance. It flickered, drawing me closer like a moth to a flame. The shadows receded further behind me, but I could still feel their presence, like a chill on the back of my neck. I quickened my pace, anxiety mingling with a spark of hope. The glow pulsed softly, illuminating what looked like remnants of an old room, a space carved into the earth. The walls were lined with damp stone, and in the center stood a small pedestal. On it rested a transparent orb filled with swirling light. It reminded me of the stars I used to watch as a child, beautiful but untouchable. Instinctively, I reached out. The moment my fingers brushed the surface, a rush of images flooded my mind. Laughter, fear, faces and voices all overlapping like a jumble of thoughts. I jerked back, gasping as the emotions crashed over me. This was not just any orb, it held memories, perhaps even secrets of this place. "What is this?" I whispered, half to myself, half to the unseen forces around me. Suddenly the laughter returned, louder and more insistent. "You're almost there," they called, their voices twisting with delight and malice. "Take it, embrace it." The shadows seemed to slither closer, their forms bending toward the orb, urging me to claim it. I felt torn. This orb might hold answers, the very truths I needed to escape. But at what cost? The laughter reverberated around me, an invitation tinged with danger. What would happen if I gave in? Before I could decide, the sound of rushing water intensified, shaking the ground beneath me. My instincts kicked in. I couldn't stay here. I stepped back from the pedestal, scanning for another way out. Behind me, the tunnel's mouth began to tremble, as if a flood was about to erupt. Just then, darkness surged from the shadows, moving with a swift intensity. The laughing voices changed, morphing into frantic cries. "Don't leave! Stay with us!" "No!" I yelled, my voice filled with panic. I turned and ran down the tunnel. My heart thundered in my chest as the walls began to close in, feeling as if they were drawn toward the orb. I needed a way out before the shadows caught me again. That's when I saw another opening further ahead. A sliver of light edged through the darkness, beckoning me. Safety or another trap? I didn't think twice. I bolted toward the light, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Whatever I had awakened in this place was far from finished with me. I had to break free before it was too late. The light grew brighter as I rushed toward it, illuminating the damp walls that clung to the shadows like desperate hands. I didn't look back. The laughter faded, but the sense of urgency remained heavy in the air. It was as if the tunnel was alive, pulsing and shifting with every hurried step I took. When I reached the opening, I stumbled into a wider chamber. My feet slipped on the slick ground, but I steadied myself against a jagged stone wall. The room was dim, except for a beam of moonlight that streamed through a crack above. I took a moment, inhaling deeply, trying to ground myself. Panic still surged through my veins, but the sight of this new space offered a momentary reprieve. But my relief was short-lived. Hanging from the ceiling were thin tendrils, like spider silk glistening with moisture. They swayed with an unseen breeze, drawing my attention. I stepped forward, curiosity battling the fear that gripped me. It felt wrong to linger, but something compelled me closer. That's when I noticed the shapes that were trapped in the strands. I squinted, moving closer to the beam of light. My heart sank as I recognized faces, familiar faces. They were people from my past, their expressions frozen in fear, eyes wide with unspoken words. They seemed caught in the memories, just like the orb had captured moments of my own life. "No," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Not them." As I backed away, the room shuddered around me. The laughter returned, echoing from the shadows. "They're waiting for you," a voice crooned, sultry and inviting, "just like you almost did for us." With a jolt, I turned to run, but the tendrils whipped through the air, snaring my wrist. The cold grip pulled me back, holding me in place. I gasped, struggling against their hold, terror surging through me. "Let me go!" "Stay!" the voice chimed, spinning around me like an eerie melody. "Stay and be part of the story." I fought against the tendril, my heart racing. This was no longer just about escaping. It was about saving those faces, those lives. I could feel their silent pleas urging me to act. "I won't let you take me!" Gathering all my strength, I wrenched my arm away. The tendril snapped back, recoiling as if it had been stung. I didn't waste a second. I dashed toward the edge of the chamber, searching for any sign of escape. But before I could reach safety, the ground trembled violently beneath me. A low growl echoed within the walls, a warning that rocked me to my core. I stumbled to a halt, scanning for a way out. A new shadow materialized in the corner of the room. It was dark, shifting, and unmistakably alive. I went cold. "What are you?" I breathed, fear anchoring me in place. The shadow lunged, and I realized I didn't have the time to find out. I had to escape before it was too late. With every ounce of panic surging through me, I sprinted toward the crack of light ahead. The ground trembled beneath my feet, shadows flickering at the edges of my vision. The murmurs, laughter, and cries echoed wildly, harmonizing into a symphony of nightmares. I couldn't let it reach me, whatever it was. As I reached the light, I shoved my body through the opening. My shoulders scraped the jagged edges, but I didn't care. It was my only chance. I tumbled out onto damp grass, gasping for air, rolling away from the crevice behind me as the echoes of that dark chamber began to fade. I lay sprawled in the moonlight, breathing heavily, listening intently for any signs of pursuit. The garden around me was eerily quiet. I pushed myself up, feeling the cool earth against my palms and the pounding of my heart ringing in my ears. The house loomed behind me, dark and foreboding, filled with shadows that I couldn't bear to face again. I turned to look down the street. The familiar facades of my childhood neighborhood felt like a ghostly memory now. I needed to get away from that house, away from the horrors that lurked within. With trembling legs, I started to run, bypassing the porch and heading towards the exit of the street. I didn't stop to catch my breath. Adrenaline pushed me forward, urging me to escape. With each step I took, I felt a pull on my consciousness, a reminder of the faces I had seen in that chamber. They were there, caught, beckoning silently for help. I shuddered, feeling the weight of their gazes, the knowledge that whatever I had uncovered was far from finished with me. The streetlights flickered as I moved, casting erratic shadows that seemed to reach for me, as if trying to pull me back into the darkness. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figures trailing after me, but there was nothing. It was just the quietness of night, the comforting sound of crickets and distant traffic. Still, I didn't trust that calm. My mind raced with questions. What had I truly awakened? Were the shadows destined to haunt me forever? I clutched the photo still tucked away in my pocket, feeling its edges through the fabric of my jeans. It was a link to the past, a part of a bigger story, but I was thankful I'd escaped. I didn't want to play. As I reached the main road, I paused to catch my breath. I glanced back one last time at the neighborhood. The house stood silent, its windows dark, but I could have sworn I saw movement, shadows dancing just beyond the glass. Perhaps I was too broken to let it go. Perhaps I had only postponed the inevitable. I began walking, my feet moving instinctively towards safety. I didn't know where I would go, but I felt an urge to put distance between myself and the place that had turned childhood nostalgia into a nightmare. Days turned to weeks, And as I settled in a new town, I tried to quiet the memories, the whispers that clawed at the edges of my mind. The tapping had ceased, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Occasionally, late at night, I'd hear faint echoes of laughter, like remnants of a distant dream, leaving an ache in my heart. I still think about those faces sometimes, the hunters, the ones trapped in memories and darkness. I wonder if their whispers still swirl in the shadows of that old house, waiting, watching for someone to join their game. I moved on, but I know better than to think I was free. There are echoes that linger long after the storm has passed, threads that tie us to the spaces we wish to forget. I try not to think about it, but every now and then, late at night when the wind whispers through the trees, I can almost hear them calling.